I've closed over $440 million in sales in my career, and a lot of my success has been from building sales teams using my scientific entrepreneurship strategy. And in this video, I'm going to share with you what that is, show you how I did it, and give you the checklists and the calculators to build your own team, even if you don't think you can afford it. But before I share it with you, just give me 40 seconds so I can explain how I created a process to scale sales. And then for the rest of the video, I'll screen share and give you all the tools and how to use them. And as usual, if you want free access to everything in this video, just hit the link below. So if you don't know me, my name is Raj Jha, and I've founded 5 companies. I took a company public and personally negotiated over $440 million in sales deals. But the thing that took me from trapped and doing my sales myself to a team doing it for me is when I stopped focusing on hacks and on tactics and used a scientific process. This let me build a sales team that paid for itself many times over. And if that's you, I'm going to dive in and show you how I use scientific entrepreneurship to scale sales teams. Now, I share this with over 1,000 entrepreneurs in my CEO Workbench community, and today I'm going to give you a part of that system for free. So let's dive right in. Okay, let's talk about building a sales team that scales. So we're going to go over a few things today. First, pay attention. Whether you're the only one selling right now, you're a startup, or if you have a sales team, this is going to apply in both cases. And later on, I'm going to go over at each stage of business, what do you have to be thinking about in order to grow a really great sales department? If you do this right, you're going to be able to build a really high-performing team that's going to sell for you. So if you're selling today, you're going to get some tips about how to build that team underneath you. Get it to pay for itself as you start to build it. And don't be afraid. Like, we're always afraid that something might not work out. We're afraid that we're going to hire the rep and they're not going to work out. And that's possible. We might also think hiring sales rep is too expensive. If done right, if you're going to follow the process that I outline in here, which is a scientific process of taking steps and taking tests, you're going to find out that you can actually profitably hire a sales team. Businesses that know how to do this are the ones that really grow. They 10x, they 20x. They grow because they are able to leverage sales. Staying stuck where you are because there isn't a sales process in place, because you don't have a team, is really not doing you any favors. Figuring this out is going to be the key to unlocking your business growth. And this is a skill for any entrepreneur. You have to know what makes for a high-performing sales team. You have to know how to hire, how to pay for them, how to afford it, how to be strategic in your tracking so it's profitable. And I'm going to give you a bunch of tools in today's presentation, showing you how to track and what to track and giving you a spreadsheet and all of that. You're going to get all of the tools there. So I've got a whole bunch of resources to make this all real for you. So let's dig right in. We're going to start with first, how to guarantee sales success. And it is a science. And you have to think about it in terms of scientific entrepreneurship, which is that it is that something you test and you measure, you adjust, and you repeat. So this cycle, this process of test, measure, and then repeat is the hallmark of how the scientific process works, and it's how you're going to get certainty in your sales. Instead of just doing stuff, or, oh, I read a sales book and it recommended doing this. In this process, you're going to go through it and you're going to actually have a scientific way of doing this that's going to get you better every single month, every single quarter. So we're going to use actual data here. We're not going to just be guessing. And that is going to be the game changer for you. That's why we have the calculators. That's why we have got all of the forms that you're going to see in here. Just follow the process. And in this document, the document you're looking at on the screen here, you can download underneath this video. What we have in here is the scientific entrepreneurship. We've got actually the scientific measurement way of doing things that's linked right here. So let's get specific. How a high-performing sales team works. Just a recap, if you're not familiar with a sales funnel, at the top, we've got as many possible people coming in that are just at the awareness stage. That's the red one that you see here. And then some of them are interested. Of those ones that might be interested, then some will consider purchase. That's the consideration phase. Some have an intent to purchase. Some have taken evaluation. And then some of those purchase. The key to a high-performing sales team is to filter through a large volume of prospects and determine which ones are really ready for you to engage at the next stage. Because if you're treating your sales process as everyone is ready to buy now, you are working at the bottom, at the evaluation and purchase stage, but some people are not mentally ready for that. And that means that you're going to be hard pitching them, and they're going to think that you're a douche. They're going to think that you are not the kind of person they want to deal with because you're a hard pitcher, or you're taking it too many steps further than they are mentally. On the other hand, if you use the process that we're going to talk about today, you're going to be able to bring people down from the general awareness that they might have a problem and then bring them all the way through down to the purchase phase. And what that's going to do is it's going to widen the number of people that you can sell to, because you're actually guiding them through this process instead of assuming everyone's at the bottom, and then you're only really able to address 5% maybe of the people out there. Here, you're going to be able to address a much larger swath of people by doing that. And what else does this do? This ensures that you have the right resources for the right point. Okay, so you've got different kinds of resources. You've got full sales reps, and then you've got some SDRs, and we'll talk about that in a minute. This is like a tiered deployment of sales. And I know if you're a startup founder, if you're doing the selling, don't worry, I'll get to that. I'll tell you exactly what to do. But having this tiered layer of sales resources, having some folks who are, in some worlds, they call them setters and closers, as in people who do outreach and set appointments, and those who close the deals. And some, they're prospectors and AEs. There are various names. We'll talk about those in a minute. But dividing this process into people who work the top of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel, that specialization is what's going to let you be very, very clear about what's working, what's not working, and it's going to make sure that you have the right tool for the job, okay? So you're going to be able to train people because some people are better at and are trained for getting people from that awareness stage and then down into the consideration phase, like, oh, they're considering your product. And then some are better from taking them from the intent stage, they intend to buy, and actually closing the deal. Those are very often different kinds of people. So the exact mix that you're going to need is going to depend on what you're selling. It's going to depend on the price point. It's going to depend on how many leads you're generating from marketing versus sales. So it depends on multiple things. And really, if you only have one level of sales, then you do still need to understand these things, but you will probably be wearing the different hats, okay? So you'll be both the SDR, the lead setter, and as well as the lead closer. And the important part about that is it's going to let you track what's effective, all right? It's also going to tell you who you need to hire first, and there's a calculator to show you who to hire first, because what we're always thinking about is how can you be cost effective, all right? So that is the general how it works. Now we talk about who to hire. Now there are 4 roles that we're going to talk about here. And again, based on where you are, you might be hiring different pieces of this. You might have a full-on sales team, and you might want to tweak how you're hiring. You might have just yourself. Regardless of that, you have to understand all of these roles, because if you don't have all of them, somebody is doing these things or isn't, and that's why you're not effective with sales. So the first is the SDR, Sales Development Representative, sometimes also called BDRs, Business Development Representatives. Sometimes they're called appointment setters. Sometimes they're called triage people. There's all kinds of things that they're called, but essentially they focus on that top of the funnel that we talked about. They generate and they qualify leads. If they are an outbound SDR, they are going out to the marketplace and they're saying, hey, are you interested in being a prospect? If they are an inbound, they're responding to an inbound inquiry, and they are validating that inquiry is actually a qualified lead, all right? And it's a very different skill. The prospecting skill and the qualification skill is different than the closing skill. Can you have a salesperson who does it all? Well, yeah, as a founder, you probably do it all. I have done it all for long periods of time as I was starting companies. So you can do it, but the founder is a different kind of person. No one will ever sell as well as the founder. So you can wear a lot of hats, and you get that credibility of being a founder, and so you can do that. But when you start to hire a group and you try to hire someone who's this general sales person, you're going to start to lose some fidelity in how good they are. Really, having a person who understands very deeply the initial customer contact and where they are, and meeting them where they are and holding them by their hand and bringing them to the conclusion that they want to do business to you is a very different thing from the actual negotiation and closing of the prospect. So the skills that this person needs: strong research skills, strong communication skills, the ability to quickly assess potential sales opportunities. And how are they paid? They're usually paid a base salary, small bonus, small commissions sometimes. So it's different from an AE or a full-on closing sales rep. These tend to be more base heavy. And if you want an example of a job listing for one, you just click here and then you will get a SDR job listing right there. And you can just use that. Feel free to steal that. Again, the link to this document that you're looking at is below this video, and all these other links are in that document. So you'll have all of that. So that's what the sales development rep is. Now let's talk about the AE, also called a sales rep or a closer. Although sometimes when people say sales rep, they're thinking that it's a full stack sales rep, somebody who does both the qualification stage and also does the closing. So some people use it that way. I don't like to think about it that way because they are very different functions, as I've said before. The AEs manage the deeper stage of the funnel, so the narrower part in the diagram that we saw above. So this is really the negotiation, the closing of the deal. And this is a different skill set because they're really probing at a very different level, depending on what you're selling and how much it is more like a B2B sale versus a B2C sale. They're really thoroughly understanding client needs. And if this is a big enterprise sale, then that might be an involved process of understanding multiple stakeholders and things like that. If it is a more selling to SMBs, small businesses, you might really be understanding the psychology of the business owner you're selling to and working around that. But it's a very different skill set than getting someone into that sales appointment. And there's also a lot of finalizing sales and negotiating points and making sure some of the paperwork is getting done, and a lot of stuff that's very different from the activities that the SDR does. So the SDR is working on volume. They got a lot of them, and they're trying to quickly triage them, go through them, and say who's a sales qualified lead and who's not. At the AE stage, what we want them focused on, what we want these closers focused on, is having a full calendar of appointments who are qualified to buy. If a closer is spending their time qualifying a lead, that's probably a waste of time because the closers, as we'll see in a second, are paid very differently. So they're taking over once the lead is qualified, and they negotiate. And they need strong negotiation and closing skills. They need to understand the psychology of the buyer. They need the deep product knowledge. They need to know what the product is. They need to know what the offer is. And they need to know how to manage the customer, the potential customer as well. Comp varies. Now, it can vary a lot, so I'm going to give you some general things, and later on we'll have a calculator which will help you with all of this. So there's a base, a bonus, and a commission are the typical levers that you're working with. So sometimes you see commission only all the way at one extreme, and sometimes it's a big fat base with a little bit of a bonus, and sometimes you see something in the middle, which is base plus commission. It really varies a lot by industry, so there's not one model. If you're hearing someone saying, oh, well, you can get anything on commission only, well, not necessarily. You're not going to necessarily attract the right kind of salesperson if you're offering a compensation model that is not normal for that kind of role in your industry. The number to focus on for you and your planning as a business owner is OTE, on target earnings. And that is what is the rep expected to earn if they hit quota. So what you're going to do is you're going to figure out how much money do you need to make off of this rep? And then that's how much revenue they're going to generate. And then from that, you're going to determine how much should they be paid. And there'll be some multiple of that. And that number is OTE, on target earnings, for the rep. And then you will stack it and decide, okay, well, of that OTE, how much of that is base and how much of that is bonus or commission or some combination of those. Or profit sharing, or however you're doing the arrangement. But the point is that you're going to have this OTE number, and when you're doing the planning, and as we go through these spreadsheets and things like that, we're going to look at the OTE number. And there's multiple ways of getting there, and you might incentivize people in different ways. Obviously, if you've got a commission-only structure, you might be more generous with commission than if somebody was guaranteed a base salary. Lower risk for you. but it attracts a different kind of sales rep. Is that kind of sales rep that it attracts going to be one that's going to protect your brand? Or do you need to offer that base salary so that they have some assurances and they're not going to go starve if they don't close a deal, and therefore they'll be more likely to represent your brand in the right way? A lot of choices here. I'll go into depth in another video, but in general, that's what an AE is. And again, we've got a job listing here. You can click on that and you will get a job listing so that you have job description that you can use that's effective for an AE. Next role, and a very underappreciated one, is sales ops. Sales operation manages tools and technologies, handles data analysis, make sure that the sales process is effective. So this is the person who manages your CRM and make sure that the sales process is optimized. So if you're a startup and you're doing it yourself, having a virtual assistant can really help here, because it's somebody who's taking a look at this every single day and looking at where can we improve the process? Where can we make a change to our sales process, which would be effective in getting more leads down in the pipeline? Are we using the CRM efficiently? Do the people who are using the CRM have the templates that they need to really make sure that the sales process is effective and the sales presentations are effective and the emails are going out and all of that good stuff? So a VA can help if you don't have a sales ops person. Then there's sales management. So this is as your team gets bigger, they are directors overseeing the sales team. And their responsibility is to set quotas, which might vary depending on the targets of the company. So it varies over time. Quotas will change. They think about entering new markets, if there's new offerings, and how do we map those new offerings of the company or new products onto the sales commission structure? How do we incentivize people? Do we want to promote the new thing more? Do we want to promote a certain mix of things based on the capacity of the company? So that's what sales management needs to think about. And this is more about strategic planning, leadership, and very importantly, motivational skills and training skills. We're going to talk about training in a little bit, but a big part of sales management is training, and having salespeople that you're investing in and training them is really important. If right now you are the only salesperson, you might not even have much training, but you're overcoming that by being the founder. And like I'm going to say a million times, no one can sell like the founder, because you have the fire of having created the thing and you have all the credibility of the person who can make a final determination. You still should get sales training yourself. But if you have a team, it's even more important, because it can go off the rails if they really don't understand the product, the market, the psychology of the buyer. These are all incredibly important things. And the job of sales management is to make sure that they understand this and it's being communicated effectively. So sales management might be you for a while. I don't know if you have a sales team now, but as you hire your first reps, or if you've got a small sales team, maybe you're the sales manager, don't bow out of this too soon. It's very tempting to want to get out of sales. There's some people who love sales, but there's a lot who want to just be doing more product. They want to be doing more back end or inventing the next thing, and they don't want to do the sales management. Abdicating on this too soon can be very fatal. So don't check out on sales management, or don't just hire a sales manager and say, okay, well, that's done. You really need to make sure that this is dialed in, because the sales is the lifeblood of the company, and you will be fighting fires if you unplug from this too soon. So that is who to hire, when, and affording them. We're going to talk about some calculators in a moment. So let's talk about scaling sales from small to huge. So we're going to talk about what are the steps that you're going to go through from going from startup through grow up to scale up. And these are each going to be different depending on your industry. However, there are these common stages. So let's go through them. And at the end, we're going to see some worksheets that you will have access to. Again, all downloadable below. And these are the phases. So let's start up with startup. Multiple roles, one person. You're wearing lots of hats. It's usually the founder. And what you're doing is both generating the leads and closing the sales. So you're doing pretty much everything. The important thing at this stage is to recognize you are hat switching. To recognize when you are being the SDR, top of the funnel, when you are being the AE, bottom of the funnel, and make a mental note of it and switch roles. If you munge it up and just say, I'm doing sales stuff, this is very common. I'm doing sales stuff, or I've allocated this time to do sales stuff, and then I got to run off and do delivery or product or whatever else I'm doing, but I'm just doing sales. The problem is that you're not going to think of it in a way that's going to give you numbers that are going to let you hire the team that will save you. What's going to happen is you're going to be doing sales activities. You're not going to be tracking it right because you're not going to be looking at, oh, I did these SDR activities to generate leads for appointments. I generate the sales qualified leads to have sales conversations. So if you just munge it up as sales activities, you will fail at this. And fortunately, I will give you a calculator, which will let you track this stuff. And effective management of your time has to be based on what the role is that you're doing. So you are best putting a calendar appointment saying, this is my time at top of the funnel, right? I am an SDR now, and then I am an AE now. And you will then start to learn the ratio of how much time you have to spend to qualify leads and get them into a sales conversation, and then how much time does it take in sales conversations to actually close the deal. Those are really, really important numbers. So you're going to have two different job descriptions at this stage. So I really was not measuring the right things when I had my marketing agency and I started out. I was just, it's a swirl. You're doing everything at once and you're relying on, so I try a marketing campaign and it gets a bunch of potential leads in there, but I have to qualify all of those leads. So I was doing what we called triage calls, in which we would triage the live from the dead and push some of them into sales conversations. But I really wasn't watching that very carefully. So when it came time to hire my first sales reps, I didn't have the data that would tell me accurately how many, what stage should I hire? Should I hire an SDR? Should I hire an AE? Or should I hire an AE and make a poor decision to make them do SDR work and AE work? I didn't have that information, and that cost me money. So that's the startup phase. Now let's say you grow up. Now you're starting to hire a sales team, all right? The first thing I would encourage you to think about is the Noah principle. Always hire two at a time. Don't hire one. I understand you are worried that you are going to be spending money on someone who's not working out. But as you will see shortly, I will tell you how to do that. They will not be around long. It's not like you're going to have two people for a year. You're going to quickly know. And if you only hire one, you don't know if they're good or not good. You don't know, is it the leads that are not good or is it the person who's not good? Because they're not the same as you. So maybe, you're the founder. No one closes like the founder. Maybe is that the issue? But if you hire two at the same time, you will have an A/B test. You will have a much better idea where the issue lies. So that little, it's not redundancy, but that test that you're doing, remember we're talking about scientific entrepreneurship here. It is a test that you're doing and you're seeing, does person A or person B, are they better suited for this? So you should hold on to sales for probably longer than you want to, but when you do this A/B test, use the Noah principle. You got two of them. And I made this mistake again. My first time around, I hired one rep and I didn't know if it was her or if it was the leads, or did I need to train her more? Did she not understand the company? And then I tried doing some and I could close them again, and then she couldn't, and I realized it was her, and that was the problem. I didn't have an A/B test. So the next time I hired two, and then I could say, ooh, this one is way better than that one. So that is the principle to think about as you start to grow up. Expect to go through some salespeople. Expect that they will not all work out. That's very common, and you just can't be afraid of it, because they will find a home that is good for them for a kind of thing that they can sell well. It just might not be with your company. You cannot try to save them all. It is much better to go through multiple people and find that superstar than try to make someone into a superstar. It is too hard, and there's too much on the line to try to take someone who is mediocre and make them a superstar in your context. It is much easier to go through a bunch of them and find one. You're doing them a favor. You're not doing any sales rep a favor by putting them in a situation where they're only going to earn their base salary, or if it's commission only, they're going to earn nothing for a long period of time. You are not doing them a favor by holding on to them. So it's mutually beneficial to do this process. So now let's talk about scale up. Training. Training is always a huge part of this. And when you are in the startup and the grow up phase, as the founder, you should be spending a lot of time listening to calls, doing call breakdowns, all of that kind of thing. Training is always critical. But once you are in the scale up category, and you've got sales management in place, so somebody is supervising the reps, and you are no longer daily involved in doing call breakdowns and doing simulations and listening to calls, then you have to make sure that that is a core part of what your sales management is doing. Second thing is to track numbers daily, weekly, and monthly. The more infrastructure you have in sales, the easier it is to do this. And this also goes back to having a sales ops person who can surface this information for you, and you'll have a lot of metrics around that. One thing that's really important, and I talk about this in my book, which is that I made a mistake in not watching time to close metrics. I was watching all of the close metrics of like how many prospects turned into leads, marketing qualified leads, how many marketing qualified leads turned into sales qualified leads, and that's, if this is all Greek to you, I'll do another video on that. Sales qualified leads, how many sales qualified leads turned into sales appointments, how many appointments turned into a close. So I was measuring all those things. One thing that people forget to manage is time to close. So that is how much time it takes from when someone enters your universe to when they actually just close or don't close. So they end up in close or in long-term follow-up. And the reason for that is you can make changes in your sales process that significantly affect how long it takes to close someone. And I had done that, actually. I changed some of my lead magnets, in other words, the marketing that I was doing to get leads in there, and I was getting more leads. And I thought that was great, because if all the percentages flowed down, it would work. And the percentages seemed to be flowing down, but it was actually attracting people who were slightly less interested. And so it was increasing time to close. And so what you don't necessarily realize, if you're not watching time to close, it can be extremely expensive because you're paying for the marketing dollars up front, whether that is paid marketing of one sort or another, or you're going outbound with your SDRs and they're doing outbound outreaches. That money gets spent now. And then if the time to close is really long, you're not going to get the cash from that expenditure for a longer period of time. So we always think about compressing the cash cycle. And this is one of those things that sales teams and founders who haven't done this before often miss, is that it matters how long it takes from each step. So I don't want to beat the horse to death, but I do want you thinking about time to close. It matters. Track it. 2 worksheets for you that you can click on. One is the When Should I Hire worksheet. When you click on it, it'll ask you, do you want to make a copy? And you will make your very own copy right here by clicking on that. And When Should I Hire? It's a calculator. You enter your annual salaries of SDRs, AEs, how many leads are generated by them, average sales value, and then how many sales will they generate. And it will give you a box here, which could be green or not green, depending on whether you should hire. So it'll give you a recommendation. So that is a very important thing to know, when you should hire. So it'll give you all the numbers. But remember, I told you earlier, you need to know your numbers. You need to know how many leads you could generate and the conversion rate. And the only way you're going to know that is by thinking through you having multiple hats before you hire. Or if you're a lucky person and you're coming to us with a sales department already in place, you just need to get these numbers if you don't have them already. The other thing that I have for you is the example AE sales tracker. This is actually a redacted copy of an actual one that I used. And so you can use this in multiple formats. But there's a section at the top for wins, lost, CBQs, check back quarterly, in process, how many calls they made, how many appointments were created. So I like doing this in multiple places. There is a CRM. We always had a CRM. But I also like surfacing this on a document like this because we've got the data for the just closed week, and then we made them do a plan for the upcoming week. All right. So the data for the upcoming week was how many sales calls are on the calendar for as of Monday, and we made them put that. So every week they're just filling this in for the just closed week, and they talk about how many they have on the calendar, so we have an idea of their capacity, and then they've got a call plan. So down here, there's a call plan. How many calls are they going to make? So having a document like this that you just look at, and you can sit down with a rep certainly at the once a week, and then on a daily basis, well, how many appointments did you create? What were the disposition of those appointments? So you can see a lot of information in your CRM, but especially for a lot of smaller companies, you might be using a more lightweight CRM. You might not have all these bells and whistles. So a simple sheet like this is a focusing and clarifying thing, because now you can go back and you can say, okay, well, on weeks when in this case, the AE had 6 on the calendar, let's look at this trend here. Sales appointments for the upcoming week. So for these middle weeks here, she had 6 on the calendar, but then it went to 4 and 3 and 3 and 2. Now, well, what else is happening here? Oh, okay, well, let's see. It's around Thanksgiving time, so clearly there's a dip around Thanksgiving time. Maybe that accounts for it. Or do we need to look at her activity metrics and say, okay, how many calls did she make? Well, let's see. In this week, at the just closed week, she made 69 calls and then 87. So you can look here and start to see things week by week that you wouldn't see if you didn't do this. So I strongly encourage you to take this, use this, make your own, what have you, but you need to be tracking this number. Okay, so that's the Wench.Hire. That's a sample rep activity tracker. So now let us turn to building a superstar team. All right, so what should you hire for? This is really important because sales gets a reputation of you're hiring for a slick person. I don't believe that. I believe that sales is hiring listeners. And sometimes the quietest folks are these secret killers because they are truly actively listening to the prospect. And they're saying back to the prospect so what they've just heard. They're reiterating it. So the prospect has said something and the rep is actively listening and then repeats back to the prospect what they just heard. And then after that goes on and the prospect really feels heard and understood, then they start to map what the offer is to what the prospect truly needs. And that is far more powerful than someone who might be slick looking, but isn't really listening. They're more talking. That is a very different kind of rep, and in my view, a less effective one. Another bullet point, if you've got a senior hire, particularly if you're hiring for sales management, it's awesome if they teach you something you didn't know during the interview process. Because if you're a founder, unless you've had training in sales, then you don't necessarily know best practices in sales. So if you've got some aha moments of how you're interviewing them and the sales management person is telling you, well, the first thing I would do is this. And you're like, wow, I never thought of that. That's a really good sign. Now, do you know if that's the right way to do it or not? No, not necessarily. But they're bringing to the table actively how they would approach the problem. And you can investigate in the interview process, how are they thinking about it? And you can ask things like, well, how would you measure that? What does success look like? What would the team then look like? How would you grow the team? And so if you're learning things during the interview process about how they think and things about how they approach the organization of the sales team, that's a good sign. Skills development, super important for a superstar team. Record every call that you can. Do call breakdowns. And that is call breakdowns for calls that went well and that didn't go well. So I had a library. I recorded everything. And I had a library of good and bad sales calls. And I did commentary on it, and I recorded it as a curriculum. So a new rep came on board, and they had 2 weeks in which they were not only learning the product, but they were listening to sales calls, which had me kind of stopping. It was a recording, and I would listen to it, and I would stop, and I would comment on it. So they would first learn the product. They would learn the sales scripts. Then they would listen to a sales call that I had done or one of the other reps had done, and then my commentary on top of that. And that was a really good baseline, a foundation to the learning. But the real kicker is doing breakdowns on their own calls. All right. So role playing, how would you handle this situation? And then doing a breakdown of their call. What are some other ways that you could have done this? And then also, did you adhere to the script? Why or why not? And making it a very intentional process instead of a process by which the rep just shows up and is like, well, didn't close that one. Well, that shouldn't end it there. Right? Well, why didn't it close? We need to do an AAR, an after action review on why didn't it work. This is the only way that you're going to help them get better and help them adapt to how the marketplace is changing, to how what customers are hearing out there, and how your products are changing, and how you're making sure you're getting a superstar. Because otherwise you can get someone who just, you're not sure, well, is it just a dip because it's, as I mentioned earlier, it's Thanksgiving time, there's a dip. Or are they getting lazy? Or is the product not really fitting the market anymore? And you could have a sales rep that's just sitting on your roster, underperforming for a long period of time, because you haven't dug in and really understood. Is it there actually what's going on the calls, or is it something else? So definitely do that. It'll take a ton of time. It is worth it. And here's the last bullet point. If a rep isn't working in 60 days, let them go and move on. And you have to be clinical about this. They don't get better. There's a honeymoon phase, and as entrepreneurs, we're often eternal optimists, and we always want to think it can work out, and we always want to think that we can save them, and we want to think that we can fix it. This is one of those times, which I mentioned earlier, where it's probably best not to make it work out because the costs are too high. If you are keeping a underperforming sales rep, they're not making their commissions, they're not earning what they could earn at a different organization where they might be successful. You are not doing them a favor. You're not doing yourself a favor because you're burning money and you're burning time, and those are two incredibly precious things for you and the company. And you're also burning your energy because it is a real energy drain, an energy suck when sales is underperforming and you start to think, I could just take it over myself again. And then you're going backwards. So don't give them too much leash. 60 days max. And last thing, the downloads. So these are all of those downloads that we talked about. They're all available here. And this document that we've been going through together is available itself underneath this video. So click on that to make sure that you've got this in written form and all the resources so that you can build a superstar sales team and scale it. So now that you know how to scale a sales team and have the resources to do it, check out this video over here, which talks about the scientific entrepreneurship methodology and how you can use it to scale your company in every aspect, in sales, in marketing, in operations, and grow in a way that you never thought was possible.